Good morning, Ollie. Welcome to my podcast, One for the Road. The last time we saw each other was a couple of months ago when I come into London and recorded your podcast, School of Rockbottom. I thoroughly enjoyed that day. And we got on really well, didn't we? Right from the off. And I
Absolutely
said,
brilliant.
look, it'd be absolutely lovely for you to come on and share your story on my podcast as well. So, how are you today?
Do you know what? I'm doing really well, David? Thank you so much for asking me on. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. Obviously, you'd been in my consciousness via social media for a long time, and to actually meet you in person, it was amazing. And I reverb everything you said back. An absolute gent, brilliant guy, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here on your podcast. So thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, mate. And I don't actually know that much about your story. I know bits and
Mm.
pieces, but I like it that way because I get to hear it like a listener as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
as you know, we start at the beginning. So it'd be great if you could wind it all the way back and tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I grew up in Norfolk, in Norwich. Although half my family are from North London, which I ended up moving to many, many years ago as well. Um, I trained as an actor. That was always my passion. So, sort of growing up, I was always full of energy. Didn't think I had anxiety, to be honest with you. I think if you'd have asked me when I was a young person if I had anxiety, I would have thought you were completely bonkers. But what I do notice now, looking back, is that my first addiction was to thinking. I was a chronic overthinker. I was always thinking. I wasn't necessarily worrying, but my brain was always worrying. And alcohol was quite a present force in my house. My dad liked to drink, no judgment there. But I just always remember thinking, it'd be really cool when I get older because, he used to smoke Benson and Hedges in the gold pack. Drove a little sports car, and I thought, great, when I'm older, I'm gonna smoke cigarettes, drive a sports car, and go down the pub. Um, when I first tried alcohol, I think I was about 11. I thought it was disgusting. Someone gave me some vodka and I sort of spat it straight out. The first time I remember it kind of working, if you like, was I was at a house party when I was about 15, and there was a girl in the upper six that I really liked. And I sort of got her on her own by the microwave, as you do in a one of these house parties. And basically my plan was to ask her out. And I was kind of a little bit like Hugh Grant in Four Weddings and a Funeral, when he's trying to profess his love to Andy McDowell, or sort of stuttering and blah blah blah. It went really badly, and then I went back into the party, and someone handed me a can of Castlemaine 4X. I don't know if you remember that. It's a really
I
old
do.
school beer,
I do.
and all of that kind of overthinking and worry just went. And I actually went back and I turned into Joey from Friends, which, at that period of time, he was the man. And I went, "How you doing?" Do you know what I mean? And all of that kind of overthinking, that kind of like feeling uncomfortable in my own skin just went. And so for me, the next logical thing was, wow, I can't wait to have another one. But it didn't really build that much even then. It was kind of like, it was a really good bonding agent with my dad and his friends because my dad enjoyed the pub. Once I was sort of 15, 16, it was sort of me and my dad could now sort of hang out on much more of a level, and I was one of the guys. Then I went off to university and I studied drama, and I was quite young. There was a lot of mature students, and I think they found me a bit irritating sometimes. I was sort of just, bouncing off the walls with energy. And I'd sort of have a beer and I just kind of like, I just sort of like chill out and be a bit cooler. And I could really focus on the conversation and all that overthinking. So it was quite powerful. But, being a drama student, I then went off to drama school as well. I was always around lots of people that were drinking all the time. It just seemed completely normal, particularly at that point, to just particularly on the weekend just go out and get absolutely hammered. And actually, in comparison to a lot of my peers, then I was fairly normal, really, in comparison to the people that I was with. I lost one friend at university a couple of years after graduation, who died in a drink driving accident. Um, and that really hit me like a ton of bricks. By this point, I was about 24. And also, I was in a fairly long running TV job that kind of just finished. I felt, looking back, it wasn't kind of out of the blue. And that's really when my drinking started to escalate. But for 15 years, I was just really, by and large, a weekend drinker, really. Um, and I only really drunk on the weekends, but I sort of ring fenced it into the weekends. And I thought, well, I can go out, I can get as smashed as I like, and I don't have a problem if I don't touch it for the rest of the week.
Mm.
And I remember sort of going into even going out for a roast on a Sunday and people saying, "Oh, have a little hair of the dog, have a little Bloody Mary," and me sort of saying no. I was very career driven, so I thought I knew that once I started doing that, I'd probably start drinking throughout the week, and of course that's what happened. The old classic, you know. I'm having one on a Sunday, then it's Thirsty Thursdays, then it's Happy Hump Wednesday, then it's Tipsy Tuesday, and
Mm.
then it's Monday. Well, of course I need a drink because I'm so depressed.
Well,
Um,
you're in a hard industry as well. So when you say your TV career kind of ended overnight, being an actor and whatnot, it's so unpredictable, isn't it? And I suppose you
yeah.
got the highs and lows of that. And I know that from when I was doing 60 Minute Makeover, you would hear of a new season coming back. And to be honest, mate, for me, it wasn't an earner at all. In fact, it made it worse because I was running my carpet company normally and to go off for a few weeks as we used to say, on tour all over the country doing it was less than what I was getting from the real world, but I enjoyed that world. So it outrode the financial side of it. But
Got
when
you.
you say like your TV, what was you doing at the time and what ended?
Yeah, well, it was a lovely Saturday morning kids show. That was kind of like, back then in the early noughties, kids TV, particularly on a Saturday morning, was still at its heyday. There was the Saturday show, Live and Kicking and Dick and Dom and the Bungalow. It was all that, and I was doing it was kind of half drama, half presenting job. And I'd just done some stuff in the West End. I'd just done another TV series, and I just kind of came out of drama school really sort of flying, really. And yeah, and it got cancelled after the second one, and I think it did hit me hard because I sort of moved agents at the time, and it went really quiet. And then I think my mate dying from uni, and also, I got with someone that was kind of, let's say, liked to party. I think it was kind of like the perfect storm, really, for me to just kind of, lean much more into alcohol at that point. And
Mm,
also, I got all my validation then from my job.
mm,
So the fact that I wasn't working, I thought was evidence that I was a really shit human being. I
yeah,
mean, I look back now and I think that's ridiculous, but that's how I felt. If I wasn't actively saying to people in the pub, I'm about to do this or I'm about to do that, my self-worth was zero. But as soon
yeah.
as I got a job, I was king of the world again. So it was the perfect storm, really, for hitting the bottle, you know.
External validation, and when you heard these shows cancelled, or not brought back, did you take that kind of personally? And then
I
you,
did.
yeah, and then
I was full
you
of resentment and fear, really.
mm,
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was quite resentful towards the industry. I
mm,
sort of viewed the industry like almost like a lover that sort of cheated on me. I had this really unhealthy view of the world, and it just got worse. I got more bitter as the sort of weekends dragged on, and just thought, you know what? I think my best friend is the drink. Actually, that this is something that never lets me down, and it just became my
yeah.
crutch, really.
Well, it was reliable, isn't it? Because you know it's going to do the job every single time,
Yeah,
you know.
that's it.
And what did that look like then? You're drinking, like what stage of your drinking were you at?
So when it sort of went from having a few drinks on a Sunday and then sort of pretty much most evenings, that's when it really started to accelerate. But it was kind of gradual. I used to sort of say it was a bit like my alcoholism was a bit like having a really fast car that could do a million miles an hour, but it just went 1 mile an hour at a time. And then at one point it just went whoosh.
Mm,
But yeah, so it was every evening. And my ex at the time, she was sort of, I remember her saying maybe you should go to AA, and being absolutely gobsmacked. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I go to work, my career was still happening. I wasn't drinking during the day at all. And that went on for a long, long time, just kind of heavy every night. And then I remember one day I had to be somewhere on a Monday morning, and I was on the Jubilee line, and I was having a panic attack. Panic attacks at this point were really common. Anxiety through the roof. I'm taking diazepam as well just to cope with it. But yeah, alcohol is helping me with my drinking. I'm telling myself. And I'm on the Jubilee line and I'm having this panic attack, and everyone's, I think, looking at me. I'm like super paranoid. I'm sweating buckets of alcohol through my pores, and I just ran off the tube, went into a local corner shop, went into a little phone booth with a little bottle of Glen's, necked it, and I came out and I felt great. And that was the beginning of the end,
Mm.
really, because my brain was like, well, you may as well just get on it all the time. And I kind of managed that for a while, but I got to the place where, according to a report in the US last year, where about 10% of people get to, where I went from sort of kind of functioning and
Mm.
getting away with it to completely non-functioning. And I became that stereotypical chronic alcoholic, I suppose. I couldn't function at all, David. All I could do in the end was go to the off license, come back, drink everything I had, pass out, throw up, repeat. And it was a living nightmare,
You was
to put it
obviously out of
bluntly.
work at that point as well, right? To do that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was I was without an agent for a while, and there was long periods of time where I was sort of taking breaks, and telling people that I was ill and that I needed a rest and things were going on. And people knew that there was more to it. I used depression as an excuse for a long time. I mean, I was depressed, but I used lots of reasons as to why I wasn't available, but I never said it was alcohol until much later because I
Mm.
was just so embarrassed.
Did you
Um,
manage your depression by drinking more then? Because that's normally self-diagnosis, isn't it? I need more alcohol to not feel depressed, and then you wake up even more depressed.
Absolutely. I mean, I was using alcohol for everything, even the things that it was causing problems with, which is, the insanity of it.
Mm.
And I think they often talk about the invisible line with addiction or alcoholism, and people sort of talk about it as if it's this mysterious place. And for me, it's quite a clear moment. I think for me, it was the moment when the consequences came in. That's when I wanted to drink even more, and I think that's for me the line between heavy drinking and alcoholism, because once those consequences came in, it's like, well, now I really need to drink more. I
Yeah.
remember my liver doctor telling me, if you carry on drinking like this, you could be a drink away from cirrhosis. And I said, you've triggered me now for a drink. And I went to Tesco and bought some vodka on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's also any reason for an excuse, isn't it? Like that's what
Yeah,
I found. It's like, look, whatever it was meant drink. So
yeah.
I might as well just owned up. But I suppose that's the denial. I mean, denial's a funny old word, right? Because it's often the opposite. Because when we say, oh, we're in denial, we actually really know that we got a
Mm,
problem. But I
yeah,
suppose the denial comes in of doing something about it.
yeah.
That's the
No, I'd
difference.
agree. Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. I think my denial probably had like four layers to it. There was the first one, which was more like a delusion, where I just couldn't see it. That didn't last long. And then there was the next one where I was aware of a problem, but I'm just going to kind of drink and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
And then there was another stage for me where I was like really angry if anyone brought it up.
Mm.
How dare you talk about my very destructive
Yeah.
alcoholism?
How dare you
And
call me out?
yeah, how dare you? And then I was in a really painful place. So I got into recovery in late 2012, but I didn't stay stopped till the 8th of May 2015. So, and most of that period, I wasn't in denial, but I call this the last phase of denial, which is wanting to want to stop.
Mm.
Didn't want to stop, but I really wanted to want to stop, if that makes any sense.
That's really interesting, actually, um, because I think I was in that stage about a year before I stopped. I kept saying to myself, like I was like a madman walking around talking to myself, swearing at myself, going, "You've got to do something about it. You've got to sort this out." Like mumbling under my breath like a lunatic. But I think what that was doing was just planting tiny little seeds in my head that
Yeah.
for when I was ready, it was like, what are you doing with your life? What is going on with you? I
Mm,
remember finding a litre of gin in my office. I had an office in the garden, and it was an empty bottle of gin, and I hate gin. I was given it for Christmas by a customer. I was like, oh, I'll give it away in that. But it's probably in desperation that every now and again I was swigging out the litre of gin and put it
Mm.
under like a blanket in the office or something like that. And then I found it one day, a dusty old empty bottle, all sticky and whatnot. It's like, God, that is real desperation to neck something neat that you despise. And
Yeah.
you've just done it to get the content of the drug, you know,
Yeah.
bit by little
Absolutely.
nips here, little nips there, just to keep you going, just to keep you sane, whatever that looked like at the time. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I really get what you said about that fourth stage of denial, that I really wanted to do something about it. But there were two things. One, I didn't know how. And two, there was a part of me that really didn't want to do something about it.
Yeah.
You know, I quite often say to people, is there a hidden part of you that doesn't want to stop drinking? And often
Mm.
there is. And
Yeah.
it's not until you own it and see it that you realize, wow, it's like the split personality. It's like, yeah, I really want to stop drinking. Is there a part of you that doesn't? And to be honest, the answer is yes, right? Because we've done it for so long and it works. It's a
Yeah.
medication. It anesthetizes us, right? So why wouldn't you? Like if you, whatever drug it is like, to be quite frank, human
Mm.
nature would lead us there. People have been doing it for thousands of years. So what's changed now? But it's the real thing about wanting to do something about it and doing something about it is the
Yeah, absolutely.
difference.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of look at the science of addiction and look at that kind of, I look at it like a chronic learning disorder, when you sort of look at the neurological level. And that survival bit of the brain, it learned, many, many years ago that I need it to survive. A lot of people call dopamine the survival chemical. And it's once the amygdala learns that it's worked, it helped me on a plane when I was having a panic attack. It helped me, I thought it helped me anyway. Helped me talk to people. It helped me stop worrying, and it worked really well for a period of time. They often talk about that in recovery, don't they? That was actually our solution, then became the problem. And it was so hardwired into me that it just seemed impossible. I remember talking to a therapist and saying, alcohol's in my DNA. It's impossible for me
Yeah,
to stop drinking,
yeah,
which is absolutely insane. But
yeah,
I really believed it. And unfortunately, I had to like nearly kill myself on a few occasions um, for the penny to drop that this will kill me. This isn't about survival. This will absolutely destroy me.
yeah. I
Um,
love what you said there.
yeah.
Alcohol's in my DNA, right?
Mm,
Because we can say, we can frame it in a way of no, it absolutely isn't. But for me, it actually is still now, because I
mm,
know that if I had a drink now, I would be fucked,
same.
right?
Yeah.
So it's still in my DNA, but it's how I choose to manage it is
Yeah.
the key. So
Yeah.
people sometimes say to me, do you think you'll ever drink again? And I say, I don't want to drink again.
Same.
And that's the difference, right? Because I genuinely don't want to ever drink again. And I
Mm,
was talking to someone yesterday about I was having a drink with a mate of mine a couple of years ago in this lovely pub, and it was a perfect scene, log fire, beautiful food, great company. And I had a couple of alcohol-free Brooklyns or whatever. And the placebo effect made me feel half cut.
right.
And I
Right.
said to him, am I slurring? And he said, no. I said, I feel half cut. And it was horrible. I
Mm,
hated it. I absolutely
yeah.
hated that feeling of being out of control. So it had the
Absolutely.
opposite effect to me of like, oh my God, that's what it's like. To
Yeah.
me, it was the opposite. And I'm thank God that I'm in control of all my emotions and all my thoughts now. And that's a godsend for me, to be honest, because if it took me the other
Yeah.
way, I would have been in trouble, I think.
100% can agree with you because I think I was about a year into my recovery and I got an infected wisdom tooth and I was in agony and they prescribed some quite strong painkillers. And I spoke to one of my recovery mentors at the time and he said, as long as you take it as prescribed, you are in a lot of pain. And I took it and it made me feel a bit stoned, if
Yeah.
I'm honest with you. I went to the bathroom and I made myself sick and I chucked
Mm.
him down the toilet. I was like, I do not want to be anywhere near this numbed out feeling. And I was so pleased. And something else happened. I was about 4 years in. I accidentally took a sip of wine at this work event. I had a tumbler of water and it got moved and I took a sip and I went, oh my God, I think that was wine. And I
Mm,
immediately went back to my hotel room. It was a party in a sort of a conference hotel. And I downed about 3 bottles of water.
yeah,
I was just like, I just don't want it in my body. I was so happy with my reaction
yeah,
to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you finally got to the place in your life that you stopped drinking, and you say
Mm,
2015, right?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this year, 10 years ago, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
crazy.
so when you got to that place, right, what
Mm.
did that look like for you at the time? Like, try and describe where you were with your emotions, where you were in your life, and how you did it.
Well, I'd had a year sober. Um, and I kind of celebrated with a drink. I mean, it wasn't conscious. I didn't sort of consciously go, "Oh, I've done a year and I'm going to drink." But looking back, all the tools that had helped me up until that point to get to a year during 2014, I ditched them 3 months before. I sort of thought, well, I'm kind of cured now. Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of good to go. I don't need to do any of this stuff that's been working. And had a bit of a fallout with somebody. Went into a Soho bar and had a double whiskey, and I was drinking solidly from that point for 3 months. And I was kind of no fixed abode at one point. I was staying in various hotels. I was completely suicidal. Um, and I just couldn't stop. It was the most aggressive phase of my alcoholism. And especially after a year of being dry, um, it was round the clock, and it was vodka, and it was brutal. And family had to intervene. They sort of tracked me down. I'd kind of gone missing. I remember going to a train station a couple of days before, thinking about jumping in front of a train. Really, really. And what stopped me? I mean, it's kind of ironic, is I thought, well, if I'm dead, I can't have another drink. That's actually
Yeah.
what stopped me, which is, I'm sorry to make this bleak, but that's where I was. And then I ended up in a treatment center that I now work in, um, and tried to escape on day 3. Luckily someone found me trying to get out, and something happened in that rehab where it was just this realization that, Ollie, you're going to be one of these people that alcoholism kills. You're going to be one of these stats. And something just snapped. I was like, it's never going to happen to me. And all of a sudden, it literally was, I'm going to do everything in my power to conquer this thing. And I will do everything I can and make it the most important thing in my life. And once I really committed to that decision, it's not that it became easy, but it became a pleasure to be in recovery, if that makes
Mm.
any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, looking back in hindsight, you did a year sober. Now, I often quite talk about doing the work, right? So, I look at getting sober as learning to drive, where the first part is the practical side, the clutch, the gears, the mirrors, the 3-point turns, learning how to manage cravings, triggers, that kind of metaphor. And then
Yeah.
you hit the emotional sobriety, and that can come within a few months or a year. Do you feel in that first year you were day counting and not really doing the work? And so when you got to the year, it's almost like, wow, I'm a year sober. I can celebrate.
Mm.
What do you think happened for you to drink on that day?
I think during that year, even though I was playing the role of someone in recovery, my heart wasn't fully there. I was always sort of fantasizing about when I'd go back. And I think, so many people were proud of me and what I was doing, that I kind of just wanted to keep it up. But, I'm the kind of drinker that unless my heart and soul is into recovery, I'm going to go back out. And so I think once I got to that year, I felt a bit flat. It felt like, oh, it's just another day. I was kind of expecting a graduation or with a nice hat, and
Yeah.
maybe everyone would have a party for me. I mean, not that I told anybody. And yeah, I think because my heart and soul wasn't there, I think it was inevitable, really. I was kind of paying lip service to recovery. Um, and so, yeah, I do see it as inevitable, really, that drink was going to happen, unfortunately. And as soon as it did, that was it. I was off to the races,
Yeah.
and
I mean, I've heard it, you know, recently I've had Abby, who was the flute player, and she was 5.5 years sober and had a glass of champagne and then drank for I think 10 years or something. And it,
Wow.
like
Wow.
they say you're one drink away. And
Yeah.
that's why I like to frame it that I'm allergic to it, like a nut allergy that kill me.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it because I even talking about it now, that one drink, I could lose a lot,
Yeah.
and it's just not worth even entertaining the idea of it. And I've often said that I've gone through quite a lot in my sobriety.
Mm.
But you don't know what's around the corner. But I still feel strong enough that whatever happens, that I just won't revert to that because in the last 6 years, I've really learned some quality coping mechanisms to manage stress. And,
Absolutely.
you know, it's important to me to keep reassuring myself of that and not saying, oh, God knows what would happen if I did, because I won't.
Absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. Recovery is 10, 20, a million times more powerful than addiction. I think anyone listening to this who's worried that, particularly if they're in early recovery, that these cravings and triggers and thoughts are going to last forever, that they won't. If your heart and soul is in it. I mean, at my worst, I was being hospitalized very regularly. I was throwing up blood. They took all the alcohol off me, and a nurse found me eating Gillette shaving foam in bed because I could read that there was ethanol in it, you know. And today, I went on an all-inclusive holiday at Christmas. People have said to me, "Did you not notice all the alcohol?" Like I genuinely didn't. It didn't even cross my mind. I've remarried. I've married in recovery. Got married to a lovely lady, and she drinks. There's alcohol in the house. I just don't see it. The obsession's completely gone.
Mm.
So it just shows what recovery can do because I just genuinely never think about it anymore as an option.
What was the second time around then? Like, so you say you drank, was it for 3 months solidly?
Yeah, that relapse lasted 3 months. I
Yeah.
mean,
So,
before that year, it was it was all it was even longer than that. But yeah, that last relapse was 3 months. Yeah.
so when you say solidly, were you
Mm.
out of work again and you were drinking in the day and like not, you know,
Those 3 months I was completely off grid. That was the worst period ever. I mean, I,
yeah.
I almost sort of vanished off the face of the
That's what I
earth.
mean. So it's like you just literally, I've had this period of my life that I've got myself together.
Yeah.
How did that feel to be back there?
It was awful, even worse than before because I'd experienced some level of recovery. And I think the rock bottom was even different. Some people talk about a spiritual rock bottom. I think I probably had that. And that doesn't necessarily mean God or religion. I just kind of felt completely disconnected from myself and the world around me. I felt like, the sort of person that maybe would gladly give into this illness. I started to romanticize about sort of dying in hospital. I sort of thought, well, my family will come and see me in hospital. I'll gradually turn yellow and they'll all sort of say goodbye to me. And I thought, I'll be all right. I'll have some vodka by my bedside, maybe some Librium, some detox medic. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
No, but I
It's,
relate to that, right? Because
yeah,
that's almost like an inner cry for help, isn't it? Because I visualized my own funeral before.
yeah,
Listening to
yeah,
the Pink Floyd, my favorite track ever in the world, Comfortably Numb, with my
mm,
headphones on, wailing, but almost getting some joy out of the fact that there would be people weeping over my grave. And it's like,
yeah,
what the hell? And and I was watching the Beautiful South video. Old Red Eyes is back, and the
yeah.
only
What tune?
yeah, and the people around the grave with the landlords weeping because their loss of income, you know.
Yeah,
And it was like, and when he was at the bar and there was him in the glass calling him in was a powerful thing. But I'd so romanticized that view of where I was in my life. And when I look back
mm,
now, it's like I want to give that guy a big cuddle, me, of Dave, mate. Look, you really aren't in a good place here to be thinking like that. And thank God I pulled
yeah.
myself out of it. You know,
Thank God.
there were times in my life that I really didn't care. whether I woke up or not. And that's what addiction does to you, isn't it? When you go to the extremes of where we were.
Yeah, and I had, like I'm sure you did, chronic physical addiction as well. So in the morning, sort of within it, well, I was just shaking. My whole body was shaking. I'd go and see a GP, and they'd say carry on drinking because they were so worried about me having a seizure. So it really is like addiction checkmate, because alcohol and benzos are the only two drugs that will kill you in withdrawal. So it really gets you by the ghoulies in the corner,
Mm.
where even medical professionals are saying you might, my advice is go and have a can of beer. And you're like, this is crazy,
Yeah,
you
but do you
know?
know what? That's why I often say, like, if you are at that level, you've got to be really, really careful when you stop drinking because it's
Yeah,
dangerous. So I've talked to William Porter, which you've had on your podcast, all through
absolutely. Yeah.
Alcohol Explained. And I asked him why I didn't get withdrawals like you got because I was drinking a litre of vodka a night and more at the weekends. And he said, you're a big guy, you've got a very physical job, and you graft it. Your body was used to grafting it off every single
Yeah.
morning. So I would never really want to drink in the morning, but I would have like I couldn't sign a document without my hand shaking or anything like that. But I didn't have chronic withdrawals. But I've
Yeah.
heard people say, I've gone in and they're drunk again, so I've poured all the booze down the drain. And it's like that actually could kill them because
Yeah.
in withdrawals you need that.
Yeah.
So
It's insane, isn't it, really? That it gets you in checkmate like that,
but yeah,
alcohol.
but it's your body's dependent on alcohol, and this is why you need medical supervision to withdraw,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I know you talk about this a lot, but it's a depressant and it literally depresses the nervous system. So when you stop drinking it, all the glutamate starts to go crazy and your hands start to shake. And obviously that can result in a seizure or death, and you can fall over and bang your head. And there's
Yeah.
lots of things. I had hallucinations as well. I was seeing things, hearing things crawling on my skin. I mean, it was pretty much as bad as it can get, really. Yeah. And so the thought of ever going back there, yeah, no, thank you.
So
No,
the
thank you.
second time around, had you
Mm.
learned from the first year, and were you like more solid in your foundations with stopping drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of tried a few things out that was working. I was kind of ducking into lots of different kind of recovery groups. Camden Alcohol Service, I'm in North London, were amazing. They had lots of groups. I was going into 12-step fellowships. I was going into smart recovery groups, relapse prevention groups. I was doing all sorts of things. This time, I sort of really committed to sort of one program, I suppose, got some really good support around me and started volunteering at Camden Alcohol Service as a volunteer. And I went for a one-on-one session, and my key worker said, "Would you like to be a Camden recovery peer?" And I was like, "What?" I said, "I've barely got out of rehab." She said, "Well, you'll go on a 3-month training program, and if you're still 3 months," and I started running groups. There was one lovely lady who was 15 years off crack and heroin running it, and another one who was 10 years off booze. And I was just like a rabbit in the headlights running these groups on a Wednesday afternoon. And because I was volunteering for the NHS, um, they then sent me on loads of courses for free. So I did all my substance misuse courses, I did all my motivational interviewing, I did counseling courses all at night. And then once I got a few qualifications, I started contacting rehabs and initially gave my services for free and said, well, why don't I just come in? And there's two that I currently work for. And I think that alongside, for me, 12-step fellowship and also uh, giving back in recovery via rehab work, obviously the podcast as well hugely helps me. So I think it's a combination of really committing to a program and also finding a way of giving back and being in the middle of the recovery bed. And then, yeah, it just seemed to change my life really once I started doing that.
Yeah, and it's important as well to talk about connection, how important that is, and like the 12-step fellowship didn't work for me, and I've realised as well that I should have at the time maybe gone to a few different fellowships because I went to one in Clapham and
Yeah.
I liked it in the beginning. I've said before, I think it was the environment, the church. I love churches,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
go into a church and it's all like la, you know,
Yeah.
and the stained glass windows and the candles and the smell, the smell of the
Yeah.
church and whatnot. And I think that kind of Right. I was looking online for St. Christopher's or something to buy and wear straight away. You like I went all really religious and and
Yeah,
then I think after 4, 5, 6, it was like, oh, I I don't know if this is really working for me.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I went to an event where I actually met William Porter and Claire Pooley in that, and it was almost a little bit more normalized for me personally.
yeah,
But
yeah,
now I run groups. I have an amazing one on a Thursday, and it's that kind of connection that really helps so many people because I always say it's a bit like the Freemasons handshake. Is that if you've had a problem with addiction or booze or whatnot, and you meet someone the same, that you don't even have to say anything, you just nod. Do you know what I mean? Because
that's
you
right.
understand each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really open-minded about recovery. I'm not one of these people that thinks there's just one route to recovery. You know, whatever works, works, and that's wonderful and it should be celebrated. But I think you're right. Some kind of connection is vital. The first word of step one is we, and for me, that is the most important word in the English dictionary for me personally in my recovery. I've got to find a way to stay connected, and whether it's through you know, online groups or whether it's through smart recovery or whatever it is. I had one friend who became a Buddhist,
Yeah,
and that seemed to arrest it. Uh, any way that someone can stop drinking and have a happy recovery is absolutely wonderful,
yeah.
whatever that is. Yeah,
Yeah, and you
100%.
can mix and match and you can do whatever
Yep.
you want. I know people that are in my group and they go to AA and they go to Smart Recovery.
Yeah,
They get a
absolutely.
little bit from each one. It's meeting different people and, doing the work yourself, educating yourself. I found that for me, it was the education side, learning about the science of addiction has really helped
Yeah,
me
me too.
massively. And my Instagram helps me and my this podcast helps me and it's peppering it in, isn't it? So
Well, exactly.
now what about your career since you've
Yeah.
been sober? Is that like, are you now headlining somewhere on tour?
It's interesting in my career because it's I have to sort of pinch myself really. Not because I'm doing Hollywood blockbuster movies every week, but just because the range of work that I'm able to do. Because I think one of the great benefits for me in my recovery has been able to re-engage with what my purpose is. Because I thought my purpose before was kind of be a sort of world famous actor and basically just have a great time on the planet. I was kind of a bit of a hedonist, really, but a misguided one. And now I sort of see my purpose as very different. And it's so simple. I just think my purpose on life is to help other people. Um, and I think it's that simple. I don't know why it took me such a long time to figure it out, but the world is full of beautiful people, and the world is so beautiful if you look around. And I think really my job is just to add to it in some way,
Mm.
just add to that beauty. And throughout the week, I work with young people. I've got a theatre school, so I'm really passionate about youth development. So I get to do that on the weekends. I'm really passionate about mental health, so I get to do my podcast every week. I get to work in rehabs, and I'm really, really passionate about acting. And I still do voiceovers, and I still act. I just did a nice short film last week, and I've got 3 things coming out soon. And sometimes I'm doing all of those things in one week, and I'm just like, wow, I'm
How
sort of
blessed. Yeah.
doing a bit of everything that I love. And
Yeah.
so none of that would have happened had I carried on drinking. I mean, I'd definitely be dead by now.
Yeah,
Um,
100% like me. But I can
yeah.
see how you do voiceovers because you've got a very engaging voice. My
Oh,
voice
bless you.
sends people to sleep. I mean,
That's
I
not
did.
true.
No, it does. I can
No.
assure you, people use my podcast as a hypnosis thing. They go,
No.
"Yeah, I By the time
That's
I've got 10 minutes in, I'm fast asleep and sleep like a baby." And I did. Lab Bible did a post on me as well, and there was a few comments. This bloke is so boring; it makes me want to drink.
No, you're kidding me. No way. But Dave, you're constantly in the charts, mate. So
I
you
know.
can't be boring. You can't be
It's
boring.
a
You're
guess,
smashing it.
probably.
No, no, don't do yourself short like that. You
Yeah.
don't have a boring voice at all. I think what's brilliant about you, Dave, is you're incredibly authentic, and I think people can relate to that. So you're definitely not boring.
Well, I appreciate that, mate. So let's go on to your podcast, School of Rock Bottom. I love the name; it's
Mm,
fantastic. How did that come
thank you, buddy.
about?
Well, I did a lot of presenting when I was younger, and I always thought I wanted to jump back into it. And when podcasts started happening, I thought, oh, I should really think about doing a podcast. But I was quite sort of worried because I working a lot with young people, and at this point, so I was about 8 years sober at this point. I'd never been public about my sobriety ever. I'd never announced on social media that I was another year. I just felt really like I didn't want to share it with the world. I don't know why. But I knew my podcast had to be about recovery. And actually, if you listen to the first few episodes, I sort of introduced myself as a mental health coach. I don't even use the word recovery coach, and I was covering all kinds of topics like depression, OCD, which I still do. But it wasn't until sort of a bit later that I started outing myself in the podcast. And when I turned 9 years sober last May, I sort of did my first post, and it just hit me. I was like, well, why am I hiding this? This is ridiculous. And I think my podcast benefited from that moment because I could be much more open with my own experience. And I had a little black book of people that had hit rock bottom and kind of flipped their life around. And I showed it to a friend, and I had like 30 names written down. And I said, would you be able to ask 30 people onto a podcast who have had this bleak time in their life and now they're acing it? And he's like, I wouldn't even know where to start. And I was like, okay, this is a resource. And so I started off just interviewing creatives. So my first ever guest was David Sharl, who's in The Office, and he's well known as Jay's dad in The Inbetweeners. So he was the first person to trust me. And yeah, we've just done well. Episode 51 has just come out. So and I do it every 2 weeks. I now release old clips on the other week, and probably like yourself, Dave, I just absolutely love it, and it helps keep me sober as well. I think because
Yeah,
I'm connecting with amazing people all the
yeah,
time. And
yeah.
even when you're editing it, you're hearing their words again and again and again. So I absolutely love it. And thanks so much for coming on
Oh, I
when you
loved it,
did.
mate. And it was a lovely little quirky studio in the basements in a building near Waterloo, wasn't it? And it was just so
Absolutely.
lovely. You know, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. And you're a great presenter as well. You really
Thank
interviewed
you.
me wonderfully. So thank you for that opportunity. So
Thank you, Dave. Likewise.
before we wrap it up,
Mm.
I think, you know, you're 10 years sober this May. I'd really like you to kind of help the listeners who are struggling now, whatever stage they're at. You know, they could still be drinking and just at the beginning of thinking about reining it in, or
Mm.
they've tried several times and they just can't get there. What would you kind of suggest to them to try and just step it up and get there?
I mean, I've never met anyone that's got sober and regretted it. I mean, I've never met a single person that's gone, I got sober 6 months ago and it was the worst decision of my life. I gave up booze 5 years ago and I wish I'd never done it. You know, why is that? There has to be a reason. People always say it's the best decision I've ever made in my life, you know, and the great thing is you can always change your mind as well. The drug dealers aren't going to suddenly all move abroad. The pubs aren't all going to shut down. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen? I must admit, I was a little bit scared of enjoying recovery.
Mm.
There was a bit of me that thought about, well, what if this does work? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
What about if I am one of these people that is happy and sober?
yeah.
Um, but then I realized, what's the alternative? The alternative is I'm just going to get more and more of the misery that I've got. And, when you're in active addiction, you're kind of learning a really horrible story. The story is that everything always turns to shit, nothing works out. And then recovery shows up and says, well, actually, things could be better, things could be great. And it's really hard to believe that. So I think by engaging with groups, whether it's with yourself on a Thursday night or going into a 12-step fellowship or a smart recovery meeting, getting around people that are in recovery that you can relate to. I was around some really great people early on, other actors that were 2, 3 years further down the road. And when I had a bad day, they'd be like, listen, it can be like that, but just hang in there because this will happen. Because
Mm.
otherwise, recovery is just kind of like imagination. You know, you've got to be around other people that are on this path because they're the only ones we're going to listen to. And it's the best present you'll ever give yourself. And for your loved ones, it is the most ultimate gift, you know?
Yeah, I agree. But there's also a sense of lack of self-worth, lack of self-belief that goes on, isn't there? You know, and
Yeah.
sometimes when you see someone on social media that's saying it's the best thing you can ever do. There's part of us that go, oh, whatever, mate. I'm never going to be there. So I think
Yeah,
sometimes it's like sitting with yourself and asking yourself certain questions. And for me, it was, where do I want to be in a
yeah,
year's time? Like, what
absolutely.
do I want to be doing with my life? And I knew I was at the right stage when the answer was, I want to be doing more than what I'm doing now. I want to
Mm.
be doing better than what I'm doing now. I want to be more healthy. You know, my health reached a stage that I didn't know if there was a return, and almost there was a self sabotage of like, well, go out in glory then, whatever glory looked
Yeah,
like, you know. But I think
yeah,
it was taking a pause and reflecting and thinking, right, I've got another chance here.
mm.
And by asking myself the right questions, kind of gave me that sense of excitement of, do you know what? What if I did stop drinking now? What
Yeah,
would my life look like in a month's time? What would it look
yeah,
like in 6 months' time? What would it look like in a year? And that excited me. And I think that's what did it for me, you know, because
yeah,
at the time I had such low self worth, such low self
same.
esteem, and lack of belief that you could have waved £1 million in front of me and said, look, that's waiting for you at the end of it. Here we go. And I would have gone, no, I'll never get that.
Yeah, 100%. Something sounds cheesy happened to me at the end. I came across a quote when I was in treatment. It said, one day, a storm turned around to the devil and said a storm was coming. Oh, do you know, I've forgotten it now. You might have to cut that out. Yeah, there was a brilliant quote. Anyway, it was about so that was it. A voice whispered into the devil's ear, "A storm is coming." To which this, do you know what? I've forgotten it.
We
I'm gonna
can
have to
cut
email
that
it to
out.
you. Yeah, you're gonna have to cut that out. But it was a quote. Yeah, let's cut all of that bit out because that was a
We
bit
can
rubbish,
leave
wasn't
it.
it? We can
So
leave that bit out. Yeah, there you go.
we
God, I
leave
just
it
had a
in.
complete. We'll leave it in. I just had a complete blank on it.
No, I did that last week on a podcast. And I don't know if it's left in or not because I never listened to them back. Because I'll go to sleep with the sound of my own voice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't need Naito. I just listen to my own podcast. But um,
yeah.
yeah,
No, I think it was
honestly,
just. I think it was just at the end. Sorry to interrupt. It was just this real self determination that you know what I'm gonna. Because my self esteem was really, really low as well, and a lot of people didn't think I could do it. And I just started telling myself, you know, everyone loves a comeback story, and I started almost sort of visualizing me as almost like Rocky or
yeah, yeah,
something. You
yeah,
know, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And I
yeah.
found some from somewhere this kind of inner strength that yeah, I was going to do it,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that was a
10
big
years down
difference.
the
Man.
line, you have, mate, and you're doing well. The podcast is brilliant. School of Rockbottom.
Thank you,
And
Dave.
what have you got in store for the next few months?
Well, I've got a few. I've got three films about to come out. One is a sci-fi. One is a horror, and then hopefully I'm in something that's about to be on Apple TV. But until I see it, I don't want to say what it is because you know us actors we get cut out of things all the time.
Yeah,
Um, so that's pretty exciting. I've just done an animation as well, which is going to come out this year. I think it's going on Netflix. That was really really good fun. And in terms of the podcast, yeah, I just want to keep growing it really, making it bigger and better. Keep getting really amazing guests like yourself on, and the rehab work is going really well. And also my performing arts that I do with young people. I'm
I
about
love that.
to hopefully open another school
Yeah, that's
during the
amazing.
week. During the week, so I'm hoping to expand. So yeah, it's going to be a busy year, I think, a really exciting year, which I'm really grateful about. Yeah,
I love that, mate. I love the fact you're helping young kids and that come through, you know, and there's some amazing talent out there at the moment, isn't there? You know,
unbelievable. Yeah,
yeah,
I love working with young people. If you can have a positive experience when they're young, um, it's amazing. And actually, when the mental health stuff comes up with young people, where you know anxiety or panic attacks or whatever it is, it's great to be able to kind of guide parents a little bit as well sometimes. And I sometimes even have parents reach out now around stuff around alcohol, which is incredible. I never saw that coming. You know,
yeah.
they'll take me to one side and go, can I talk to you about about this thing around alcohol, and I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
even helping the parents now.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
So look,
it is
if you
unbelievable.
remember the whole thing about the whispering in the ear of the devil, then drop us all a line. That's hilarious.
That was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it?
No, I did do it the other week, and do you know what? It was a saying by
I
Gabor
got it. I got
Mate.
it. I got it.
Oh, here
The
we go.
the devil whispered in my ear, "A storm is coming." To which I replied, "I'm the storm." Come
Ah.
on.
Well, thank you, mate, because that saves editing.
There you go. I think you should keep it in. It keeps it real, doesn't it? I know it's cheesy. I read it on the side of a group room and I was like, that's right, I'm the storm. And I saw the devil as the bottle. And I'm like, right, I'm ready to fight now.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
right. Absolutely, mate. And you
Yeah.
smashed it.
Thank you, mate. And you as well. Keep doing what you're doing. And, it's amazing what you do. 6:30 every morning, I get this amazing post always come up. And it's like, I don't know how you think of all these things to say because they're always bang on the money. So brilliant.
Good man. Thank you, Ollie. And it's been a real joy having you on today. Thank you so much. Keep on doing what
My
you're doing
pleasure.
as well. Everyone, listen, School of Rock Bottom. It's a great podcast, and you have a diverse range of different guests on there, which is lovely as well. So it's a superb bit of work. Thank you, mate. And let's catch up
Pleasure.
soon in the spring or summer in London somewhere
I'd love
for a
that.
coffee. It'd be great. Thank you so much for joining me, mate.
Hey, Dave. It's been an honor, mate. Really has. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.
Bye, mate.